welcome to our Sex and Violence Gaming in Dystopia panel. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to sit with us this evening. I know there's been a lot of panels, a lot of cosplay artists and celebrities, so thank you for ending your amazing Comic-Con evening with us. I'm Jess Abran, I'll be your host and MC for this evening. In the gaming world, I've done hosting for GamerNerdz.com, as well as used to have my own vlog called Spill with MTL Blog. I'd just like to clarify that we're by no means professionals or experts on this topic, but we all work in the industry. And we'd really like to promote a discussion on this crazy controversial topic, okay? Sex, violence, and feminist movements are currently under the spotlight in the gaming world. And we're not here to debate, but to discuss the radical changes that are happening right now in our beloved gaming industry. But most importantly, we'd really like to hear from you guys. So now I'm gonna let my panelists introduce themselves. Amber.
Hi. Oh, here we go. I don't know if I need this, but I'll use it anyway. Hi, I'm Amber Goldfarb. I've been working in games for 5 years now, almost 6. I started on AC2, I did Brotherhood, Revelations, Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I worked on Watch Dogs, a bunch of stuff, so yeah. And I also work in film and television. I was just on Helix, and I'll be doing a panel tomorrow at 11, so come to that too.
Hey everyone, I'm Shawn Baichoo. I'm also a local Montreal actor. I've worked extensively at Ubisoft doing motion capture and voice work. I've been in all the Assassin's Creed games, Watch Dogs, I was in Outlast, and a few others, Deus Ex. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here and looking forward to our discussion.
Hey, this is my first panel at my first Comic-Con, so I'm a little bit nervous, just kind of bear with me.
Woo!
Thanks. I've worked in the Assassin's Creed series games, AC2, AC3, worked on Thief 4 and Deus Ex Human Revolution. And I'm going to be a trainer in an upcoming fitness game for the Xbox One Connect, which is coming out soon. So, happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
It's a huge turn up. My name is Steve, or some people call me Voice, whatever you want to call me, go ahead. So listen, first of all, I'm a musician in Montreal based, obviously, and I'm also the co-founder of the GamerNerdz. So those of you who were last year, we had a panel last year, I said last year twice, on next generation gaming. So anyway, yeah.
All right, so this is how it's gonna go down. We've got 2 topics, one of them sex, controversial, and violence. These are 2 big things that are being hugely discussed in the gaming industry right now. So for each topic, I'm going to ask 2 questions to the panelists. And after the questions have been answered, I'm going to give a short Q&A session of 5 minutes after each topic has been discussed. So my first question is, can a female character play a leading role in a game without being overly sexualized? I mean, we see this all the time in like Mortal Kombat, the Tomb Raider games, you know, the small waist, the big butt, the big boobs. I mean, we know it sells. So I'm going to give this question to Amber.
Thank you. All right, let's just start it hard. Let's just go for it right away. Absolutely. I absolutely believe that a female protagonist can carry a project and without being overly sexualized. One example that I often like to give is that of Ripley in Alien. I know it's a film and not a video game, but that role was originally for a man, and Ridley Scott decided to flip it and give it to Sigourney Weaver, and she did an incredible job, and people love that film, and it's still a classic. And ultimately, it was just a great role, and it was a great story, so people want to watch it. That's what it comes down to. It's the sex or gender of a character and how sexy they are is irrelevant if the character is really good and if the story is really good. So in a nutshell, that's what I believe, yeah. And I mean, there's so many examples of it too. Like a lot of what comes to mind is from film for me. But I mean, even last year, the Hunger Games was #1 in the bestseller at the box office, and Frozen, which was another film with a female protagonist, was #3 at the box office. So you have 2 films that are like raking in tons of dough, and the women are carrying the story. So it's just, the examples are there, you know? In Mass Effect, in terms of video games, being able to choose the sex and gender of your character, and people love that. Like, that really went over well, and I don't think the sexuality of the character and how sexy they are matters if the character is interesting.
I was going to chime in on that point, because you actually mentioned Tomb Raider. So those of you who play Tomb Raider, you know, the first ones, Lara Croft, big boobs, like she said, small waist. But the new Tomb Raider came out, the one came out 2013 by Crystal Dynamics. They toned her down, right? She wasn't the same character before. And the reason why people liked that game was because this character was now relatable. So when you played the game and you saw Lara go from this, you know, I guess, scared little girl, and she transforms into this character, and you care about her because of her character development. You don't care about her because, you know, she's attractive or whatever. I mean, yes, she's attractive, but she's not overly sexualized. So I remember that, I mean, the game ended up selling, was it 6 million units in a year? And I mean, Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix weren't, I mean, for them it wasn't a success, but it is. I mean, the reason why it wasn't a success for them is because it is Tomb Raider, it's not a new IP, they expected more, but it still did relatively well. Like, if you compare it to games like The Last of Us and what's the other one? Anyway, The Last of Us, Bioshock Infinite, those games sold around the same range. So it's a successful game, and it was led by a female character, so it can definitely happen.
Agreed. All right, second question. Are female gamers unfairly scrutinized by males? I mean, the general assumption here is that beautiful girls are only pretending to be gamers to get more likes, to get more social media traction, and I mean, this is the case some of the time, but not all of the time. Thank you so much. And Steve, I'm going to pass this one to you.
All right, okay, I'm going to start with a story, actually. I'm going to talk about my ex-girlfriend. Anyway, so me and my ex-girlfriend, we're huge gamers, and she was a huge gamer. She was just as good as gamers I, if not sometimes better. We both played Halo online. We played Halo Reach, Halo 3, whatever. And every time we played online, the reaction from males, and I'm not going to say it's every single male because not every single male is going to be misogynistic, but when we played online, whenever she'd kick ass, you know, we got two types of comments. The first one was when she did good, was, you know, they go down to the lowest, you know, denominator insult, so they call her, you know, all the words that they'd say, and it's just so demotivating because you're playing and trying to have fun, and people are just like attacking you, telling her to go make a sandwich. It's the stupidest thing. Or they'd assume that, this is funny because they'd assume that she was just talking into the mic and I was the one playing because there's no way a girl can be a good gamer.
Yeah, people think that all the time when I play too.
And it's the stupidest thing. And the ESA released, I guess, some stats last year or this year. So 36% of gamers are girls between the ages, actually girls that are 18 and up. There actually are the majority, males are actually 35% that are, I guess, males. Only 17% of males that are teens are gamers. So the belief before was that males, teenage males were I guess, the majority, and that's not the case. Females are beating them. And it's not, I'm not just talking about mobile games. When it comes to computer games, you know, video games, the consoles, it's a 50-50 split between males and females. So girls are in this. They play, they play, right? I'm not changing my sex anytime soon. Anyway, that's my rant.
All right, so do you guys have any questions? Again, can a female character play a leading role in a game without being overly sexualized? And are female gamers being unfairly judged by dudes? So if you guys have any comments on that, there's a mic right up there.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Ladies, don't be shy either.
Yeah. Pleasure. Todd, it's funny, I was just playing Thief 4 last week, and I remember shooting you in the face. It's crazy. Live. But we're talking about overly sexualized women. Question, can an ugly protagonist, female or male, can they sell games?
I'll take that one.
Do it.
Being an ugly female and all, having dealt with that in the past. Thanks, good question. I have my opinion on what sells a video game. I think that if a game is good, if it's well written, if it's compelling, if there's a good arc, if the character has, you know, a journey, if they develop throughout the game, that's what's compelling. That's what us, the consumers, I'm a huge gamer too, so I game, I love different games, experiences, and types of games, and I find the games I react to the most are the ones that have a compelling story. And personally, I've never played a game and been turned off right off the bat by the character not fitting some kind of trope or stereotype, typical, set of attributes, if you will, like the Lara Croft and all that, the overly sexualized female. I don't think that's necessary to make a game good. I've played plenty of games that, halfway and you forget the gender. I think Mirror's Edge, for example, is a good example of that. Now, have you played Mirror's Edge? Do you know the game? You're female in it, but it has no bearing really on the experience because it's a first-person shooter type of game. But the game I find is compelling, the mechanics are good, it's well written, so to me the experience of playing as the female protagonist is part of the experience. And I think, part of the reason why we're having this discussion today is because I think when people argue automatically against women being involved in video games, either as protagonists, as contributors, directors, writers, developers, etc., that we're actually, as men who argue against that, we're arguing against better games. Okay? I'm not saying that women are better or worse than men at coming up with games or contributing to them. But women make up half the population of the earth, and they're just as creative and insightful and capable of producing good content as men are. And when we exclude them because of whatever stereotypes and things we've already conditioned ourselves to believe, I think we're really hampering ourselves and cutting ourselves off from a possibility to have new experience. In other words, I think if we're given something good, we'll enjoy it. But if it's left to the community to say we want this and we don't want that, then these things will never be given a fair chance.
Actually, before you ask a question, sorry, I know. By the way, she's from, what's it called again? Geek Lovers Podcast, awesome day. She interviewed me a few weeks ago, it was awesome. Anyway, shout out. I just want to bring up a quick thing before you ask a question. It's about the Anita Sarkeesian. I don't know if you guys who followed it. You guys followed her show called Tropes versus Women. And it's a feminist movement, a feminist movement, and she talks about how women are unfairly portrayed. And she got a lot of slack. She got a whole lot of slacks. And I'm not saying it's not all gamers, but she got attacked. Some people disagreed with her, which is fine. You're allowed to disagree. But then they went too far, and people started doxing her, started hacking her. Rape threats. It's one
big deal.
Yeah, it's one thing to attack someone because you don't believe what they're saying, and you're allowed to say, to voice your opinion. But when you take it too far, and you cross that line, and you put someone's life at risk, that's taking it too far, right? So I just want to bring that up, and maybe if you guys had any discussions around that you want to bring up, I'd be glad to hear about that. Go ahead.
Actually, kind of was asked my own question. I was going to ask you about with the increase of people just trolling people to the point of death threats, rape threats, to just any female gamer or any female developer. I just want to know what your thoughts on that were, and when is it to a point where when should people be thinking, okay, enough's enough, this has to get toned down? Well,
so the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, actually spoke about this. They sent out an open letter to the game community, and they brought up a topic. They said, listen, it's like I said, it's fine to voice your opinion. When it gets too far is when you're attacking people and you're putting out their personal information. So for example, for Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian, their information was put out there, and I think Zoe they posted nude photos of her. That's taking it too far. And I just want to point out when it comes to trolling, a lot of people say, with this situation especially, they really zeroed in on the gaming industry, trolling is only something that happens in the gaming industry. The truth is, you can put out, look at any Justin Bieber song online, he gets trolled like a mofo, right? And it's not gaming related, what happens is when you're suddenly hidden behind the internet and you have this fake sense of, what's the word? Security, right? You tend to say what you want to say. For example, when I play online, actually no, when I was at Machinima last year, or the year before that, we had a show called Sudden Death, and me and my colleague Dinkar would be, we'd be talking on the show, and the comments we got, some of them are really positive, but I'm gonna use the word, people calling me a nigger just because I'm black. Really, that's trolling, but it's not every single person in the gaming industry that's doing that. It's just people who are hidden and they feel the right to say what they want to say because there's no repercussions.
It's funny because actually yesterday I was playing the demo of Mortal Kombat 10, which is amazing if you haven't played it yet.
It's out.
Well, they have the demo
What am I doing here?
Well, I got the same comment. I got another guy was there in the room with me, came in, we played, and at the end he was just oh, I didn't think a girl can actually play a game like that. It's I kicked your ass,
Yeah, and there's a lot of females in the game. I'm going too far or too much, just shut me up. there's a lot of women in the gaming industry. Obviously, we have Jess, we have Amber. And Amber, if you guys don't know, she played what's the name in Assassin's Creed? What? Aveline. Yes, awesome.
She's the first female protagonist in the Assassin's Creed series.
Yay! So there's a lot of women in the gaming industry, not just, I wanted to get stats on how many women, especially in Montreal, are developers, and I couldn't find it, so I'm sorry. But look at people like Naomi Kyle, look at people like Andrew Renee, people in gaming media that are obviously gamers and they're true gamers. I know for a fact Naomi Kyle, she's online playing Batman Arkham Origins every other day, right? So there are women in gaming and they've been around for a long time. Women who've been playing games, that are adults, have been on average playing games for the last 13 years. So it's not like, women that play games are new, you've been around, right? So it's unfair that males will scrutinize.
I just want to run a tiny little experiment right here. All the women here who are actually gamers, could you raise your hand? Amazing.
Yeah!
Okay. Now, out of all these women who've raised their hands, how many of you have experienced some kind of discrimination or harassment online as gamers? Yeah, that's about half or more than half. So it goes to show that the problem is, systemic for sure.
Well, I think that like a good thing, the whole thing about trolling and not censoring yourself is an issue with online in general, right? It's not, like you said, it's not just gaming, it's like the cyber world. And I think that we often don't think twice before we say something, before we type something, because the person is not in front of us. But if the person is in front of you, you're going to think twice about how you're going to say it and if it's worth saying. And also, we'll have like an emotional response to something and feel justified to attack. But if you have such a strong emotional response to something you see online or to something you're hearing about, then it's good to ask why. Like, one, is someone being treated unjustly? Are you being treated unjustly? Do you feel that there's some like injustice going on? Or maybe do you feel attacked, right? Because sometimes I think what happens is that with feminist movements in general, people feel like, I'm being attacked, and get all defensive, instead of being like, okay, wait a minute, what is this person really trying to say? Like in the case of Anita Sarkeesian, she is a well-spoken, intelligent woman. She's not attacking anyone, she's just stating facts, in my opinion, and in a very diplomatic way. But people are feeling attacked by it. But so if you're feeling attacked, it's like, okay, why? Like, do I need to reflect, and I'm speaking of myself in this too, right? Because we all need to reflect on our behavior. Is there something that I'm doing that is maybe that needs evaluating, or is someone else not being represented fairly, or you know what I mean? It's worth thinking about it. The moment you tense up and have a reaction, it's worth thinking about why and seeping on that before responding aggressively immediately.
Okay, I'm just going to add one little thing to what Amber said, and then I'll put the mic down, I promise, for now. But I agree totally with what you're saying, and I think if we can go one step further is, we're not drawing a line here and saying, on the left side of the line is all the bad gamers who do bad stuff and treat women poorly, and on the right side is all the nice, well-meaning people who are egalitarian. That line is very blurred. It's a very gray kind of area, and because there's no, exact divider, I think it's incumbent upon all of us, including the people up here on the panel and anyone in this room, to do the kind of reflection that Amber's talking about and realize that even if you think you're a good person and you're supportive of feminism and of the issues we're talking about today, it's easy to make certain little mistakes and like spilling your glass of water when you're talking, for example. It's not cool. But it's easy to think you're not part of the problem and then close yourself off to the possibility of being educated further on the subject, right? And I think the best thing we can all do is whenever we come across these things, the person being discriminated against, whether it's based on race or gender or anything else, religion, if that person says they're offended or what you're doing was out of place, it's your job to stop, listen, and hear what they have to say.
I think it's like our duty as gamers, everyone, all of us, to stand up to that kind of behavior and not just kind of, if you see it, just let it go. And like hopefully that person will complain, but like all of us, if we see it, just like you would in real life with a bully, right? And I think the anonymity of the internet kind of just lets us go like, oh, whatever, that person was discriminated against, and so yeah.
I just wanted to say I really like what you guys are saying, and also that recently there was a commercial that was going around online called, for Always, I think it was. And it was about being like a girl, and there were like different captions of older women who were asked to run like a girl.
Row like a girl, run
Oh,
like a
I
girl.
saw
Yes.
that as
Yeah.
well. Who else saw that? Oh man, that was a great
And I write for Girls on Games, right? And so obviously, you know, you're thinking, oh, girls on games, so it's just about girls and it's just like this. And recently I had someone ask me, like, what is that? You know, why girls on games? It's not, we're not excluding men, we're just saying we do it too, and we love it too, right? And I think that what like you guys are saying is pretty much just having that like openness and like willing to evaluate things before reacting. And I wanted to ask you guys, in your experience where you've been, you know, targeted by people who either have, you know, something to say to you in terms of trolling or in terms of like just how do you handle that kind of a situation, being in the spotlight, and but also making yourself, you know, making your opinion be heard, but without like offending people, but at the same time making a stance, because there's a fine line for you guys, obviously, because professionally, if you go too far, right?
Actually, when we created the event for this panel, right away we had someone discriminate against us and ask us, hey, so who are you guys? And you're not professionals. Why are you hosting a panel like this? And Shawn actually was very respectful and had a great comeback right away.
And it was within minutes. It was within minutes of creating.
Yeah, within minutes. Yeah, go ahead, Shawn.
But to be fair though, the guy wasn't being a troll.
No,
He brought up really good, he brought up valid points. Like he said, well, why don't you get writers and actual directors and developers? And we said we wanted to. I reached out to a bunch of people to ask them to come. Luckily, we managed to get Amber to come down. But it is such a controversial subject that, you know, a lot of people are tied to big companies, and you know, it's very murky, and they can't just go and talk about it. So we were lucky enough to get these people, and I basically just told them that you know, we tried, we couldn't get people who are perhaps more qualified to speak about it than we are, but we've done our research. You know, we're taking this very seriously, and having some discussion about the issue is better than having no discussion about it, right? To me, that's the better of the two scenarios. So to me, that ties into your question is, I've been trolled online for various things I've done, and someone once said a really good sentence to me about online trolls, which is, don't feed the trolls, right? If you just answer a troll with vitriol and you know, look you're an idiot, you know, you don't gain anything by that. To me, when someone trolls you, it's actually a chance to educate them, to actually kind of maybe show them that they can come over to your world and see your opinion. So I think by staying calm, by making good points, and by being, you know, verbose and you know, precise in what you're trying to say, articulating your ideas, I think that's the best possible way to get someone to maybe at least come over to your side and understand things more. Because anything else, like shouting and yelling, just leads to arguing and, you know, calling people Nazis after 5 or 6 comments.
Yeah, I think that was really well said, Shawn. And also, just to add to that, I think if in the language you use, if you're careful not to blame or attack, I think the moment someone feels like blamed or attacked, they shut down, and then there's no room for a real conversation, right? And that's what I always try to say when I'm talking about things like this. It's about having a conversation. I'm not looking to point the finger. I'm looking to come to a solution together, and that's why we said this is a conversation, it's not a debate. We want to think about things together and how we can shift certain ways of thinking as a team, in a sense, you know what I mean? And I think as much as possible, if there's a way of understanding where the other person is coming from, if hearing them, being like, I hear where you're coming from, I get where you're coming from, and then this is where I'm coming from. Because people want to be heard too, right? Like that's part of it. It's like, don't take away what I love. Like, it's like, okay, I understand that I'm not trying to take away what you love. I'm just trying to assert some needs that I have too, right? And as women and as minorities and as anyone who's not being represented fairly in media, we have a right to say, hey guys, I want to be seen too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So we're getting short on time, so I just want to move on to the next topic, which is violence. So if you have a question, it could be still relevant.
I don't know if it'll be relevant. I was introduced to a notion recently. It's called a Bechdel test.
Yes.
So,
yeah, we know.
to me, I was introduced about it last week by my sister, and she explained to me the rules and everything, and I immediately started defending, like going against it, and talking, like I brought Princess Leia, and like my sister did say that, like made me realize that, yeah, in a galaxy far, far away, there's only one woman in the galaxy. So I finally kind of saw her point, so I was wondering if you had any ideas, things to say about the backdoor test, because to me...
Do you mind if we answer it after, just because we're running late on time, but I promise we'll answer it after. Okay?
Yeah.
Because that's great.
Yeah.
Can I at least just say though, before it sits down, it's an awesome
sure.
costume.
Oh, I was just going to say, you make a great Fred Flintstone, man.
I feel kind of stupid asking a question about like on gaming and women and feminists.
Looking like that?
Looking like a caveman. I feel like an episode, but...
All right. Yeah, we will. And if we forget, just Fred, raise your hand. We'll get to you. So next topic is violence. Games like The Last of Us and BioShock Infinite have strong story narratives. However, at their core, they are driven by violent game mechanics. So can games with strong narratives exist without depending on violence to sell them and to make profit? And I'm going to direct this one to Shawn.
Thank you, Jess. Okay, so can games exist without a strong, without violence in their narrative? I believe they can, personally. But I do want to, I have arguments on both sides of it. On one hand, I'm just going to say this, because I'm being honest, I love violence. I do, okay? Fake violence, let's be on the same page here. Anything fake, you know, whether it's stunt fighting, whether it's video games, movies, I love violence. I think it's a release. I think it's a way to explore your aggression as a man, as a woman too. But I think it's something that lets me really escape, right? It's about escapism, video games, ultimately. It's about being stronger, smarter, better equipped, whatever, than you are in real life. That's the point of playing a video game. So I think personally, my favorite games, the best games that I've played, are usually centered around violence. And that's just the way it is, because I enjoy that aspect of video games. But that being said, we could name tons of games that don't center around violence and that are excellent. You know, some are indie, some are AAA, blockbuster type things. I think this kind of comes back to my earlier statement about, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, as long as it's compelling and well written, people will play it. I think the same thing applies to violence. I could name a bunch of games that aren't centered around the violence mechanic and that work super well. You know, games throughout the years, you know, adventure games like Myst, let's say, for example, or you know, there's also the fact that violence is a very incremental thing, right? Do you consider Mario Brothers violent? I mean, technically you're no, but you're stomping turtles to death.
And getting high.
No, but in some circles, right? In some circles, that's considered violent. In most circles, you know, or games like what's that game? The one with I forget what it's called. The black and white side-scroller indie game. There, and you got people chasing after you. You've got a giant spider that can eat you. Sometimes violence. Limbo. Thank you very much, Limbo. I love Limbo. I think it's a great game. And it's violent in the sense that you as the protagonist, you don't hurt anyone ever, you just kind of run away the whole time. But violence is used as a threat, as like the tableau, the tapestry behind you that forces you to keep going because you don't want to get, you know, decapitated or eaten or drowned. You can die in a lot of ways in that game. So I think if violence is used gratuitously for no good reason, if it doesn't drive the story, then I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
But if it can be written into the story and be part of the experience, then I think absolutely. But I do think the two are tied together in a big way. But I will say this, and I'll end on this. I think sexism in video games is something that needs to be addressed because it is a problem. I don't think violence in video games is a problem. Anyone who says, oh, you know, people have gone shooting sprees or have done this and that and done bad things because of violence in video games, I don't think that's true. I think it's you know, blame shifting. So I think violence can continue to exist the way it does, and the problem of violence spilling out from video games in the real world is more a question of education and good parenting, I think, than it is the fault of the developer themselves.
Yeah. I think that what Shawn is bringing up is the topic that we'll probably talk about next if I know the questions. Do I? Is that the question? Okay. I was going to say something. Yeah, so a game that's not violent and actually drives a strong narrative, Portal. Those of you who played Portal, Portal 2, I love that game. It's a puzzler, and it's a AAA title, and it's non-violent, and it's fantastic. But I'm going to say this though, that most of the non-violent games that drive a strong narrative tend to be indie titles, and you can't really fault the AAA titles for not really following suit. I can look at a game like, I'm gonna bring up Ubisoft's game, Watch Dogs. If I'm not mistaken, the costs were around 68 million. Maybe you can vouch if I'm wrong, I don't know. Or Destiny, which Destiny was about 140 million. So when you're making a AAA title and you have to worry about cost, you tend to want to stick to what necessarily sells, and violence sells. So you won't see that many AAA titles that are going to be non-violent, but there are some games that definitely stand out. But I love the indie titles. There's a game that I saw at PAX. It was called Firewatch. Have you guys saw that? Looks fantastic. A strong narrative. I don't know what the game's about. I didn't see any violence whatsoever. It looks very emotional. You have this girl talking into you from a headset. I don't know what that game is, but it looks great. So it's definitely impossible for games to exist that are non-violent and still drive a strong narrative.
Does violence in video games influence real-world violence? And after this, I'll get to your questions right after. This is the last point. And I just want Tod to handle this one.
No, it doesn't. Next question. Okay, no, for real, I got cue cards and everything. There's tons of it. Okay.
Yeah, he looks real cute up here with his cue cards.
There was a study, well actually Obama is asking the CDC to conduct a study on this, and the research is not in yet. They allocated $10 million, seems like a lot, but hey, who am I to judge, right? But we don't have the results yet. So, but there was a study with, I don't know if you guys know Half-Life 2, it's a really violent game. So what they did was they got a bunch of people to play it, and what happened was they had like an altered version of the game where instead of a headshot and you'd see tons of blood and everything, they would just zap away and like evaporate. So it was like not violent at all. It was kind of like tag. And then they had one group of people that were allowed to play the tutorial beforehand. So they were like awesome at the game mechanics. And one group of people that had no idea how to play the game. So then they measured aggression afterwards, and the aggression in the people with the time like no tutorial, but the non-violent game was significantly higher than the people with the violent game and no time like for the tutorial. So it's kind of like saying, and I mean I don't need to explain to a room of gamers how frustrating it is when your game doesn't work the way you want it to work, or like when you don't. Like I was playing League of Legends this morning, and I almost threw my monitor out of the window, and then I realized, okay, my mouse is broken up, like the battery's dead, I just gotta fix it. But I was like ready to, and this is not a violent game, it's League of Legends, it's kind of funny, like, so yeah, that's it for me.
Questions, go ahead.
I just had a point for your first point about violence in games and if it is a problem. I think something you should probably analyze in that is conflict in games and how you actually present the conflict as a mechanic, because most games for a mechanic to work, it is a conflict of sorts. Like in platformer, it's the conflict of how do I get from point A to point B through the level. And it's actually very hard if you think about it to like present a conflict in a non-violent method. Like certain games can do it, like Papers, Please or Thomas Was Alone, which again are indie games. They manage to present it in an interesting method, but it's quite hard to actually show like the easiest way to to demonstrate conflict is you hit thing that is conflict, as opposed to that's a pretty easy way to put it out. But like you need to get across this room and like not be rude and bump into people. That's a much more difficult conflict to explain than hit this thing until it falls down.
Yeah. Well, yeah, also because games are active, right? So you want to be doing something that's physical, that you're actually achieving something. So in that sense, it makes sense. But I just wanted to add to what Tod was saying, because I was reading about a study that was conducted in Canada, actually, through Brock University, where they took 100 13 to 14-year-olds and they monitored their behavior and their psychological state and emotional state and everything like that. And they realized that if they were playing more than 3 hours a day of a violent video game, that it affected their moral development, that they had less empathy, that they had less trust of others, that they didn't interact as well with others. If the games that they were playing were non-violent, it wasn't an issue, and if it was under 3 hours, even if the game was violent, it wasn't an issue. It was really they noticed that if it was 3 hours a day or more, that there was a clear link. So I thought that was really interesting.
I think too, sorry, just to add to that, it's important too to distinguish between violent games for children and violent games for adults. Yeah. And they have to be rated as such, and they usually are. And yeah, because I don't think children can distinguish the same way that we do, obviously.
But the thing is that 50% of wow, okay. Whoa. Guys, it just got romantic.
Time for the sex part.
What's the mood?
Well, another study that I was reading is that 50% of boys prefer violent games that are rated M or AO. You know what I mean? Even if they're underage, they prefer that, and they'll find a way to get their hands on it. So, like you were saying, Shawn, it puts a huge responsibility on parents and on caretakers in terms of how many hours, which games, first of all, the kids are playing and how many hours they're spending playing them. It's an issue that needs to be assessed on many levels, not just like, oh, well, publishers are at fault here. It's like, okay.
And this doesn't only just apply to video games. All things in life are like that. You wouldn't say give an Uzi to a 9-year-old and hope that's going to work out properly, right? No, but that's about parenting, right? It's about supervision. And, you know, video games, you can walk into a store and say, Mom, I want Grand Theft Auto 5, and you bring it to the counter, and the guy behind the counter is like, sir, this is a rated M game. He's like, oh, whatever, Billy loves it, just buy it for him, right? And it goes out the window. But if you want to go to the theater, to the cinema when you're 12 and watch a rated R
I like
movie.
The moody thing.
It's going on, it's like a disco here. But if you go to the movies and you want to watch a rated R film, your parent has to sit there with you in the theater and watch the movie with you. And that would change their mind pretty fast if they see that, oh my God, this is terrible. Billy, don't look, let's get out of here, you know, that thing. Whereas you give them the game, go play the game, leave me alone, my God, I can go take a nap, you know, and that comes down to responsibility and good parenting, or bad parenting in this case.
Alright.
So one last thing.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to agree with you completely. I think people should be careful about ESRB ratings and there should be more enforcement. I just want to say though, because a lot of people who say that there's a direct correlation between violent video games and real world violence, I've been playing games for a long time, and a lot of people in this room have been playing games for a long time. If there was a direct correlation, everyone here is a sociopath. I should have killed 1,000 people on my way here, and I haven't.
Well,
right?
just
so honestly, personally, I'm tired of how, and you know, games get such a bad rap, where I personally feel games are unfairly scrutinized, after that's music, but people tend to just forgive, you know, movies. If a game, here's the thing though, when we were kids, we played games like Mario, right? We played games like Mario, we played games like Tetris. We've grown up. The gaming industry grew up with us. A lot of games are catered towards us because we're adults now. It's unfair that people say like, whoa, my 12-year-old is playing Grand Theft Auto. My answer is, why is your 12-year-old playing Grand Theft Auto, right? So there should be some sort of discernment. People should take responsibility. Gaming should stop being such a scapegoat. Rant over.
Alright, we got like 10 minutes. I'm going to try and bang out these questions. Go!
Okay. I want to establish the distinction between violence and conflict. I think you started it, but I just want to say that there's, let's say I'm playing Grand Theft Auto. It's a very different kind of deal if my character is out there and he's shooting other mobsters or cops that are fighting back, than if I am murdering innocent civilians on the streets who can't do anything about it. In Soul Calibur, when Hy-Vee is fighting against Cervantes, both stand a chance. So it's an even deal. So it's more on it's closer to the side of conflict. Whereas when Godfather Frankie gets kidnapped and eventually murdered, she cannot do anything about it. So that's much closer to the violent end of the spectrum, and it's very difficult to build a story, to do storytelling without conflict, because without conflict stories are boring. But it is entirely possible. However, to tell stories without violence, where the people who is acted violently upon cannot defend themselves in any way.
That's why a game like...
Thank you. Excellent point. Thank you.
That's why a game like Portal is so awesome, because the conflict is trying to escape this crazy whatever she was, and they do it using a puzzle mechanic, and I thought it was fantastic. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to know what you think about people being encouraged to play violent video games. Personally, I spend 90% of my time on gaming time playing Animal Crossing. And because of this, I don't feel like I'm a real gamer because I'm not playing Halo, I'm not playing Half-Life, I'm playing this little Nintendo thing. So I was wondering what you think, whether people are encouraged to play video games that are violent because games that are not considered real gaming games.
Let's talk in tandem.
At the same time?
I think you should be able to play any game you want and not feel any shame about it or feel any pressure. I mean, that's just not cool.
Listen, I'm a guy and I know nothing about cars, right? People tell me go know about cars, watch sports. I hate watching sports, right? I have the right to do whatever the hell I want to because I'm a human, not because I'm a boy, not because whatever. You are who you are. You do what you want.
And I like to say, you are a gamer. You're just as much a gamer as I am. Okay? Yes. And that's at the root of the problem, right? Is this distinction that this boys club mentality seems to exist in video games, that, if you don't play the games we play, Call of Duty, all these violent things, then if you're a woman, that it doesn't count. But a game is a game. A gamer is someone who plays games. And that's what's responsible for that statistic of women being the majority of gamers in today's world. It's not because more women play Call of Duty, but more women play games in general. And that's valid. And the industry should love that because that means, both genders are, putting money into their pockets. So don't stop doing what you're doing.
Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to go back to the Grand Theft Auto 5 because I've been to an EV game and I saw actually a 7-year-old guy ask his father to buy the game. He was like, okay, I'm going to buy it. And as a gamer, should I just tell him, don't buy this to your kid? Should I interrupt or do something?
Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. Like,
Don't lose your job over it, but I think if we can try to educate people on this, that's the root of the problem.
Sorry. I think it's a good idea because I think a lot of parents just don't know how violent it actually is or the context of the violence. So I think it's important to just say.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, and I think that parents, I would recommend that they either play the game or if they're not going to play it, watch a walkthrough or something on YouTube just to get a sense because a lot of parents are completely oblivious to what their kids are playing. And yeah, I think it's great to speak up and be like, hey, do you know how violent this game is?
Todd, did you have something to say?
No.
Oh, okay, cool. Next question.
Okay, do you think there's like a double standard about violent realistic video game and violent fantasy video game? For example, game like, I don't know, Silent Hill or things like that are extremely more violent than GTA 5 or whatever. But people are just like, oh, because it's monster, it's less important? Or do you think there's a double standard? Or?
Yeah, I think people tend to, for example, in Halo is less violent because you're shooting aliens, but if you're shooting humans, it's, my gosh, how dare you? There is a double standard, right? Violence is violence. If you're shooting some sort of tiny robot, you're still killing the robot.
If I could just add though, we have to bear in mind though that graphics have gotten so good now, right? Realism, verisimilitude is so high now in video games that, you shoot an elite in Halo and he dies, you can't relate to that, right? But you hit a guy in Grand Theft Auto with your minivan and he ragdolls over your hood and lands on the ground and hits a post and flips 3 times through the air in a very realistic fashion. That... So I've gone people bowling, okay? You've all done it. But my point is, that hits home a lot more because we can relate to it, and I think that's one of the issues too.
Can you do your elite impersonation again?
All right, I don't think we'll be able to get to your question.
Wait, no,
but
we have one more. We have time right now?
Yeah, we have 4 minutes.
We can't forget Flintstones.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh yes. All right, let's go. Let's do this.
I'm sitting here listening to the conversation, and it seems like you're all unanimously in favor of positive and diverse representation of women in games, and you're all unanimously in favor of representation of violence in games not being restricted in any way. And as it happens, I agree with you, but I can't help but speculate about the hypocrisy of the position, because gaming right now, it's trying to become a legitimate art form. And women's representation, are the primary argument against making it, in terms of diversifying it, is how it affects people's view on women. So if we say that people's view on women is affected by games. And if that's the case, is not people's view of violence also affected by games?
Well, no, like, okay, I'm going to use an example for Bioshock Infinite. At the beginning, in Bioshock Infinite, because the premise of the game, there's these two black people and they're being stoned or whatever, and they're being persecuted, but it's representative of the time, so it's very, it's not say it's historical, but it's historical, so there is a reality. So there's a reason why there's these age ratings, because you have to understand the context. Like, things are very contextual. For example, I mean, I do music, right? I have music videos where there's, you know, there's a girl in her underwear, but she's in it for a reason. She's not just there because, right? So there's context. Like, arts, the human body is art, can be art, right? If it's represented in a good way, it's one thing. So if a girl is half naked in a very, you know, she's just there for, you know, for sex and that's all she's good for, that's wrong. But if she's represented in a beautiful way and it's art, that's a different story. So everything's very contextual. So, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to go ahead to Fred Flintstone's question. We
Okay,
have
I'm
one
sorry.
more
We're running out
time.
of time.
We
Yeah.
can take it offline.
Yeah, look at one.
What
right.
was this question?
I was talking about the Bechdel test, and I wanted to get your impression generally about the notion of the Bechdel test.
Does everyone know what the Bechdel test is here? No? The Bechdel test, very quickly, is you take a movie, it has to have at least 2 female protagonists, they both have to be named, and they both have to have a conversation with each other about something other than a man. If it fits those requirements, that's the Bechdel test.
Right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And most mainstream films and games do not pass that test.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's a way of assessing, like, are women being represented somewhat fairly in this? And you ask those questions, and it'll give you an idea, right? It's a small idea. But I just wanted to say about your question, we were only able to scratch the surface here. None of us, like, I can't say that we stand specifically for, I can't say that we all unanimously agree that violence should not be restricted in games. I'm not in a position to say that. We just dabbled on a few ideas. It's a very complex issue, and there's more to be said, but we just don't have the time to, like, get in more deeply into it. Yeah.
All right, well, like I said, like Amber said, we just only scratched the issue, but we just really wanted to, you know, this is a really important subject. Both of these topics are really important, and I really hope that you guys, you know, go away with something to think about. And yeah, I just really wanted to thank you guys for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
Really, this is a really great cast. Thank you.
And I think it's wonderful that so many people showed up to this, given the subject. I thought the subject would scare people away, but the fact that so many people showed up to take part in this discussion, I think is awesome. So thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekends. Cheers.